In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to knit this hat. It's for boys and girls between 5 and 8 years old. It's a very easy pattern with foldable brim, so I hope you like it. Now, you can also make it smaller or bigger from 3 to 5 years old and up to 8 to 12 years old. Down here in the information box, I'm going to leave some information on how you can make it smaller or bigger, so be sure to check that out. Okay, let's get started, and thank you for watching. Okay, to start and make this hat, I'll be using these 4.5mm knitting needles. Now, I'm going to be using circular needles because I'm going to make this hat in the round. Now, the yarn that I'm using, it's this one here. It's Hayfield, and it's a chunky yarn. It's a number 5 yarn. So now to begin, I need to cast on 80 stitches, and I'm going to use the long tail cast on. So here to begin, we're going to wrap the yarn around both needles 20 times. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, remove this from our needles. So here we have enough yarn for about 20 stitches. Like I said, I need to cast on 80. So I have 20. We're going to double it up. That's enough for 40. Whoops. 40. Double it up again. That's enough for 60. Double it up again. We have enough for about 80 stitches. Now, I always like to add a little bit more. It's best to have a little bit left than have to measure this again. So I'm going to add about that much, maybe half. Let's see, that's about half. So here I'm going to make a slip knot. And now we're going to cast on our stitches. You can use any method. I just happen to like this method best. Now insert both needles through this loop. And this yarn here is coming from the yarn that we measured, and this here is coming from the skein. Now insert your index finger like this, open the yarn. We're going to go from left to right, and we're going to grab a loop like this. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. Continue until you have a total of 80 stitches, and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished casting on my stitches. This is all the yarn that I had left. Here we're going to tie a knot. Now remove one of the needles carefully. And since I'm going to use the magic loop technique to knit this in the round, I'm going to split my stitches in half. Now, you don't have to be precise, just find a spot where you can pull your cable here. Make sure your stitches stay facing the same direction and they're not twisted. This. Okay, perfect. Now, what we're going to do here is your working yarn has to always be in front of this needle here in the back. So to start knitting, I'm going to grab my needle from the back, and to join in the round, don't pull it all the way. Make sure that you leave a loop here. To join in the round, I'm going to knit the first stitch, purl the next, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit, purl. This is all I'm going to do until I finish these stitches on this needle. And then we're going to switch. So let's see, that was a knit, purl, knit, purl. I'm going to do this until I come to the last stitch. Here's my last stitch. My last stitch here, I have to knit. For you, depending how many stitches you left on both needles, you might have a purl. The important thing is that when you do the next one, you start with the opposite of what you did. So drop that needle, turn like this, push your cable. Now pull the needle from the back. For me, this stitch was a knit, so I need to start here with a purl. Then knit, purl, knit, purl, and so on until I come to the last stitch. I'll meet you there to show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of this first row. Now I have my last stitch. This last stitch I have to purl. That's why we need even number of stitches so that this here works. Now drop that needle. Now pull the needle from the back and start the second row. Here we're going to do the same thing we did in the first row. This first stitch I knit, so I'm going to also knit in the second row, and then the next stitch purl, knit, purl. Now this is all I'm going to do. So knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. I'm going to show you once again what you need to do once you finish all of these stitches, but basically all we're doing is we knit the knits and purl the purls. Okay, here's my last stitch. I'm going to knit. Now drop this needle, hold this needle and turn like this. Now push your cable. Pull the needle from the back and then start and do this next section. So that was a knit, so I need to start this row with a purl. Now make sure that you pull on your yarn here so that there's no gap here in between this side and the other side. So you do the same thing. Now this is all we're going to do here. I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to do here the bottom of the hat for, but continue watching. I will let you know exactly how many rows I'm going to do, and all you're doing is just knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. If you're using smaller circular needles, this part here might be easier because all you're doing is just going in the round and doing the same thing. There's no need for you to change or push your cable or anything, but I like this method. The longer the needles, the better with the magic loop technique. So continue. Finish this row and then start the next row in the same way. Here this is going to be the second row, so continue watching. I'll let you know how many rows I'm going to do, so I will meet you at the end of that row. Okay, I finished making my brim. I did a total of 12 rows. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 rows. Now this part here is measuring, it's about, let's see, it's about a little bit over 2 inches, which is about 5.5 centimeters. Now I want my brim to fold, so what I'm going to do in the next 3 rows is the following. This is what we're going to do. We're going to slip the knit stitches like this. Before we do this, make sure you put a stitch marker. I'm just going to use this yarn here as my stitch marker. Put a stitch marker. This is to mark the beginning of the row. Now we're going to slip the knit stitches and we're going to purl the purl stitches. Okay, slip the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. With the yarn in the back, slip the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. Slip the knit stitches and purl. Slip, purl. Slip, purl. Slip, purl. Slip, purl. Now this is all I'm going to do all around. You're going to slip like this the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. Slip, purl. That's all. So continue like this all around and I'll meet you at the end of this first row. I'm here at the end of this row. This is where we have purled the purl stitches and slipped the knit stitches. Here's my last stitch. I'm going to purl. So I'm going to drop that needle and turn, push my cable, put my stitch marker here, pull the needle from the back, and we're going to repeat this for 2 more rows. So this next stitch here is a knit stitch, so I'm going to slip and I'm going to purl the next stitch. Slip, purl. Make sure that when you slip the knit stitch, your yarn is in the back. Okay, and then purl. Slip and purl. Slip, whoops, don't do that. Slip and purl. Now we're going to do this for 3 rows, so this will be the second row. So when you finish this row, you're going to do exactly the same thing, and then I'm going to come back and show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished making these 3 rows. This is where we were purling the purl stitches and then slipping the knit stitches. So here, what we're going to do next for a total of 10 rows is we're going to do the same thing we did here. So now we're going to knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. So this first stitch here, I'm going to knit. This is the stitch that we were slipping, remember? So now we're going to knit normal, and then we're going to purl. Knit, purl. Knit, purl. Knit and purl. That's all. This is how we're going to continue. We're not going to slip the knit stitches anymore. We're just going to continue and knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. I'm going to do this for a total of 10 rows, and this is going to create a little crease here in the back so that from now on my brim here folds. So you'll see it once we have a couple more rows of what it looks like. So I'm just going to continue like this and then make 10 rows. Continue, let's do these 10 rows and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished making this part here. I did a total of 9 rows. So this is where we started to knit the knit stitches again. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rows. You can do 10 if you like, but this part needs to be shorter than this part because this is how it's going to go. See, like this. See how this part here now you can easily fold. So that's what we want. Now, what we're going to do from here on is we're going to knit all the stitches. Here to begin this row, this is the beginning of the row. Make sure to put a stitch marker here. That way you know that this is the beginning of the row, or even this piece of yarn here tells you that it's the beginning of the row. I'm just going to put my little piece of yarn there. So here I'm going to knit across, including the purl stitches. So just knit like this, knit. We're going to continue with the stockinette stitch here. Here, this is my last stitch here. I'm going to drop this needle, turn, push my cable, pull the needle from the back, and do the same thing. Knit all of these stitches. I'm going to fast forward this part here so that you can see what I'm going to do in the next row. I would also put a stitch marker to mark here this first row. That way I'm going to be able to tell you exactly how many rows I'm going to do. Okay, here's my last stitch. Knit, drop that needle, turn. Here's my stitch marker. Pass this to this side, grab the needle from the back, and now all of my stitches are facing in the correct direction, which is the knit. So now we're just going to knit every stitch all around. I forgot to put a stitch marker here. This is just to mark the first row of knit stitches. So this here. That way I can tell you how many rows I'm going to do from here on. So for now, just continue and knit all around, and I will meet you at the end of that row. Okay, I finished making this part. From here where I added my stitch marker up to this last row, I have 19 rows, and it's measuring with the brim here folded up to this last row. It's measuring about 5 inches, which is about 12.5 centimeters. Now I need to start to reduce here. So what we're going to do next is we're going to place some stitch markers. Now I have a total of 80 stitches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 stitch markers. So we're going to count 20 stitches. This is the beginning of the row. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. And we're going to put a stitch marker here. Now count 20 again. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Again, 20 stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and put a stitch marker. here we should be left with 20 stitches. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Perfect. So I'm going to put a stitch marker there at the end. Now we're going to start to reduce so that we can shape the crown of the hat. So to do this here, we're going to knit all of these stitches up to the last 2 stitches here before the stitch marker. So to do this, knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Now I have my 2 stitches before the stitch marker. I'm going to knit 2 together like this. Now pass your stitch marker and then again knit 18. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Now this stitch here, whoops, this stitch here is on this other side, so I'm going to have to, oops, join both stitches here. Don't lose your stitches. I almost lost one. So here are my last 2 stitches. I'm going to knit 2 together. Turn, drop that needle, pass your stitch marker to this needle here, and continue. Pull the needle from the back. Again, we're going to knit 18. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Knit 2 together, pass your stitch marker, and then again knit 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Here are my last 2 stitches. Knit 2 together. And this here is the end of the row, which is the first row of reduction. Make sure, put back your stitch marker. I think I'm going to change the stitch marker so that I know that it's the beginning of a row. So I'm going to add this one instead. That way I know that this here starts a new row, because in the next row we're not going to make any reductions. I'm just going to continue and knit across. So for this row, I'm going to pull the needle from the back here, and I'm just going to knit across without any reduction. We're going to be doing the reductions every other row. So in the next row, I will make a reduction. After I finish this row, I'm going to tell you how many stitches I have. You should have 4 stitches less than what we started. So if my calculations are correct, we should have 76 stitches. Now here you just knit that stitch, pass your stitch marker, and then do the same thing. Continue, finish this second row of reduction, then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. I'm here at the end of this second row reduction. I put my stitch marker here on this needle. Now we're going to do the third row. In this third row, I'm going to reduce in the exact same way I did the first row. I'm going to knit up to these last 2 stitches before the stitch marker. So I'm going to show you once again, since you're going to continue on your own from here on. So here we're going to start the beginning of the row. So this would be row 3. So knit, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and then the 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you're going to knit 2 together. Pass your stitch marker. Oh, before we continue, yes, we do have 76 stitches at the end of the second row. So here, to continue with the next section, I'm going to again knit 17. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 2 stitches before the stitch marker, you knit 2 together. And that's all you're going to do for the rest here. So turn here, push that cable, put the stitch marker there. Grab the needle from the back and then continue and do the same thing. You're going to knit 17 and then knit 2 together. So continue, finish this third row, and I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of this third row. This is a row of reduction. These are my last 2 stitches for this last section. This is at the end of the row. I'm going to knit 2 together. Now turn, put your stitch marker here, push your cable. Now at the end of the third row, I have a total of 72 stitches. So now for the fourth row, all we're going to do is just knit all around. This is not a reduction row, so all you do is just knit these 72 stitches. Now this is how you're going to continue from here on, exactly the same way. Continue watching. I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to do here for the reduction. Eventually I'm going to be left with a couple of stitches. So continue watching. I will let you know how many stitches are going to be left in between each one of these sections, and then we're going to go ahead and close the top of the hat. But for now, just continue in the same way. This would be row 4. At the end of this 4th row, you're also going to have 72 stitches. In the 5th row, you're going to make a reduction, 2 stitches before the stitch marker, and at the end of that 5th row you're going to have 68, and then on the 6th row you're just going to go all around. So continue, let's do this part, and then I'll come back and show you what we need to do next. Okay, I just finished making row 11. I have a total of 56 stitches here left. Now for each one of the sections, we have 4. I have 14 stitches. 14, 14, 14, 14, that's 56 stitches at the end of the 11th row. Now from here on, we're not going to continue and make that one row in between the reductions. So from here on, we're just going to continue and knit 2 together right before the stitch marker. So now for the 12th row, I'm just going to knit from the beginning up to the last 2 stitches before the stitch marker. So here to begin, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now knit 2 together, pass your stitch marker, and do the same thing. Knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now knit 2 together, drop that needle, turn, put your stitch marker here, pull your needle from the back, and then continue and do the same thing. Knit 2 together and then knit 2 together here. I will meet you at the end of this 12th row of reduction to show you what we need to do next. Okay, I finished row 12. At the end of the 12th row, I have 52 stitches, and in between each one of the sections here, I have 13 stitches. Now we're going to continue and do the same thing we did in the previous row. We're going to knit up to the last 2 stitches and then knit 2 together. Like I said, from here on, we're just going to do the same thing for every row. We're not going to do that one row of just knitting all around. So here I'm going to knit 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So these last 2 stitches here, I'm going to knit 2 together, pass your stitch marker, and then continue and do the same thing. That's all we're going to do from now on. So continue, do this part here. I'm not sure how many more rows I'm going to do. Eventually I'm only going to have maybe 1 or 2 stitches in between the stitch markers, so continue watching. I'll let you know how many rows I'm going to do or how many stitches I'm going to have left in between the stitch markers. So I will meet you at the end of that row. Okay, I finished row 17. That's the 17th row reduction. I have 7 stitches in between the stitch markers, and at the end of this 17th row, I have 28 stitches. Now, what I'm going to do for this 18th row, I have too many stitches here in order for me to close the hat. I want to at least have, I don't know, 20 stitches. So what we're going to do next here is I'm going to knit 2 together here at the beginning of this row. So we're going to knit 2 together before and after the stitch marker. Here's my stitch marker here. So knit 2 and then knit 1, 2, 3, and then knit 2 together. Pass your stitch marker. Then knit 2 together. So before and after the stitch marker in this row, this is what we're going to do. Now knit 1, 2, 3, knit 2 together, drop that needle, turn, put your stitch marker back. I don't think we're going to need the stitch markers anyway, so it doesn't matter if you put them back or not. Now pull the needle from the back and knit 2 together. Now knit 1, 2, 3, knit 2 together, pass your stitch marker, knit 2 together. Knit 1, 2, 3, knit 2 together. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to make any more reductions. I have 2, 4, 5. I have 5, 10, 15, 20 stitches. So 5 stitches in between the stitch markers. So I think that's fine. I'm going to now close the hat. I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn here. I'm going to use this plastic needle here, and now we're going to remove these stitches. So here's where I finished. I'm going to remove these stitches out of this needle here. Perfect. Hold on to this loop here. Don't let it go just yet. Pull. Just insert your needle through that hole there, and that's going to form a knot there once we pull here. So pull. And the top of the hat is closed. Now insert this here through the inside. And we're going to go all around one more time here just to make sure that the top of the hat doesn't open. Perfect. Now we're going to cut our yarn. Let's see. And here's the hat. Here's the top of the hat. And let's see. And that's what it looks like. Perfect. Here's the brim that we did. It's super long, but remember, it's because we're going to fold it like this, and the 3 rows that we did here helps it stay like that, stay folded. And here's the finished hat. All I need to do is just hide my ends, and it's all done. This is what it looks like from the top. I don't know if my son's going to want a pom-pom, but he says he does. I don't know if you heard him, but he says he does. So here's the finished hat. Okay, so this was today's tutorial. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.